And it's not for anyone to tell Macedonia, here are the parameters within which you must do a deal. I think it's for responsible people in Macedonia to maturely come to a decision themselves, and not for other countries to interfere, because the deal, to be one that actually works, has to be mutually agreed between the two sides.
I know that you are a diplomat, sir, and you cannot actually give me honest answers because you are a diplomat.
I will give you honest answers.
No, sir, you're a diplomat. But I will make a comparison with Great Britain and France, and I will want to hear your opinion about that. I just mentioned that there is a region in France which is called Bretagne, which is very similar with your name, Great Britain. What if France wants Great Britain to change her name because France has a region which is called Bretagne? Is that going to be a problem for Great Britain? Are you going to negotiate with France for that?
Well, my answers...
Because the problem with Greece is the same. They have Macedonia province there. They don't give us our right to use the term Macedonia because they have a region Macedonia. The same problem is in France and Great Britain. They have a region called Bretagne, which means they can call London, they can say from tomorrow you cannot call yourself Great Britain. And for now on, this is a problem between me and you. Is that actually a problem, or is it actually just crazy politics from Greece?
Well, I will give you an honest answer, and all my answers are honest.
So.
It's something I take great pride in as an ambassador and a diplomat over 22 years, that I am honest with people. What I think you've asked is a similar question to the one before, which is speculative. I'm not aware that France is asking Great Britain to change its name. It doesn't arise.
What if that happens?
It's a speculative question. It's impossible
for
me
to say. Is it actually the same thing?
The same thing as the dispute between Greece and Macedonia? Yes. Well, it hasn't arisen. I can't foresee a circumstance in which it will arise, so it's impossible for me to answer the question because it's not there in a material form for me to make any assessment about.
When the Great Britain and English people had problems in history, other nations actually helped Great Britain. Let's remember the Second World War. Great Britain was under huge attack from the Germans, and many nations, except especially the United States, wanted to help you because that was a decent thing to do. That was a moral thing to do. Why don't you help us to Macedonians now?
I think making a distinction between the Second World War and the dispute between Greece and Macedonia doesn't stand up.
You don't see the problems that Macedonia have now, sir? Don't you think that 30% unemployment is? Do you think that 30% unemployment is a normal rate for one country, when 50% are poor? Do you know how many newborn babies are in East Macedonia? For example, in one city, I think it's Probishtip, there is only 6 newborn babies for these 6 months. People don't have money, they cannot make families. They cannot find job, they cannot make houses. This is a very terrible situation, only because Greece doesn't allow us to become a part of NATO and EU. Are you aware of the problems in Macedonia and how people are living very bad?
I am aware of the problems in Macedonia. I've travelled around the country a lot and spoken to mayors, spoken to people, to members of civil society groups, and obviously everyday citizens walking around. And I know it is a very difficult time for many people, and I've seen that in several other countries. In the wake of the financial crisis, I think it's an extremely tough and difficult time for many people across Europe. I've seen my own government have to take some very tough decisions in relation to public spending as a response partly to the financial crisis. So it is a very tough time, and I've heard from people here personal accounts of how difficult it is. Where I do have a problem is still this notion of the Second World War being somehow comparable. I think the problem is if that is a starting perception that people have, then it's going to be difficult to move forward. And I hope people will have open minds as they try to look for a solution to the name issue.
You just said, sir, that in this interview, you just said that it's very bad to have a side and to take a side. It's very actually good to just be neutral. But many times in history, Great Britain actually had to take a side. Kosovo problem, Bosnian problem, when actually NATO helped the Bosniaks in Bosnia, which were under attack of Serbians. When did you decide to take a part, and when did you decide to be a neutral?
Well, if you listen to what the two governments have said in Greece and Macedonia, it has been around being committed to searching for a solution. So the environment is there. The two sides are saying that they want to find a deal. So if that environment is there, you can't come and impose a solution. You have to allow that mutually agreed deal to come forward under the UN umbrella. And the conditions are there. So I don't see that a third party trying to impose any kind of solution is going to be constructive or helpful or, as I say, give a deal the best chance of success.
We have, as Macedonia, a lot of problems, sir, and we have very difficult time solving it. One of the problems is the corruption of the government and all the institutions. How do you solve that problem in England, in UK?
Well, that's quite a broad question. If I may pick an approach that I know works particularly well, and I've seen over the last few years, is taking an approach which is multi-agency, so that you are drawing together the investigation bodies, the data collection bodies, and trying to get joined-up government working effectively. That is a principle that works in so many areas of how the government operates. It seems quite basic, but actually it can provide huge success in the way that agencies start to not work in silos anymore, but actually share information. And actually I helped launch a project here around a criminal database, which was very much about a multi-agency approach. So I think that is one particular principle that works very well in the UK, and I think will continue to work in the future.
These days is very interesting that we had elections, and the same parties are going to stay on power. But let's say if change happened, how are changes happening in UK when the new party will come on power? Is that party changing every employee in the administration? Do you have, we call in Macedonia, party soldiers, people who are just put in because they are just members of one party? Do you have that kind of things in your country?
I think it works quite differently. We have something called the permanent civil service. And the word permanent means that no matter which political party or parties take up that executive function of government, the civil service will continue. So I have worked under a Conservative government, I've worked under a Labour government, and now I'm working under a coalition Conservative and Liberal Democrat government. And the civil service will continue throughout to provide that permanency, to provide the official functions of government with a continual service. So we don't see that happening in the UK system. Let's
say, for example, who is a director of public transport in London? Is he changed when the new government came or the new mayor came? Is he staying the same guy, or is that the level where the civil servant is stopping and then you become actually executive power? Where is the level?
I don't think you can draw a specific line. The general sort of operation is ministers will be appointed. They do not always have to be from the political party. You can have ministers drawn in for certain expertise as well, or take parliamentarians from the Lords Commons. And then after ministers are formed, the permanent civil service is usually still there, and there are no changes generally at the upper level. Now, there may be some positions which are subject to change. I've seen a couple of ambassador positions overseas where appointments have been made following a new government coming into power, but generally they're career diplomats overseas. It seems to be an exception rather than a rule. For certain bodies, such as the one that you mentioned, occasionally a government will have a desire to put a particular person in place as a czar or an expert or a leader, but usually people will retain the same positions in an official level as they did before the government is formed.
How do you comment the political spectre in Macedonia? The the balance between conservatives and left parties. How do you comment that? Because we have a very interesting situation in Macedonia. We have a huge amount of people which are poor. Over 1 million people basically can say they are poor. But still in Macedonia on power there are conservatives and